Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Let's bring you more now, though, on that EU deal to phase out Russian gas. The agreement reached in the early hours of this morning will see Europe end purchases of LNG and pipeline gas by September 2027. Joining us in our Brussels studio to discuss, the head of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol. Good morning. Great to see you in the studio. This has been a long road for the European Union. The war is 3.5 years longer now. How significant is this moment, is this deal?
Thank you. I think it is a historical deal for Europe because Russia has been the number one energy supplier of Europe over half a century, since 1970s, and natural gas was the most important fuel here. Until recently, about half of the natural gas consumption in Europe came from Russia. So after Russia's invasion of Ukraine and Russia using natural gas as a weapon, Europe took this decision, European countries. It is historical. And on one hand, of course, I congratulate the European countries, but on the other hand, the market context we are in is also helping Europe, creating a room of maneuver, such as huge amount of LNG, liquefied natural gas, coming to markets starting from 2026 through 2030. So there will be a lot of alternatives to Russian gas for European countries.
Is there a risk, though, that European countries simply replicate the situation they had of an over-reliance on a single supplier by turning to other countries? You know, we know that the United States has also talked about wanting Europe to buy a lot more LNG from them.
In fact, when we look at the history, the story with the Russian gas over-dependencies started in the 1970s when Europe wanted to diversify from Middle East oil, went to another supplier to Russia. And I very much hope that Europe now learn its lesson, that doesn't repeat the same mistake and create diversification for its energy imports. For me, the number one golden rule of energy security is diversify as much as possible. There are a lot of countries providing gas to the markets. Markets will turn from years and years being a markets of sellers to the markets of buyers. So it will make the Europeans hand stronger. And of course, US is a very important ally. Europe will continue to import US LNG, but there will be also other opportunities for Europe.
Where do Russian supplies go now then with this deal to phase out the European purchasers?
This is a key question for Russians, and first of all, they will lose a lot of money, lots of revenues, and it is not easy for gas, unlike oil, to go from one destination to another, because the big chunk of the Russian gas came to Europe through pipelines, which were built years and years. And now Russia is trying to increase its exports to China, which is in fact a difficult undertaking for several reasons.
Now, the EU Energy Commissioner also saying this morning that a proposal to ban imports of all Russian oil is going to be tabled at the beginning of next year as well. They're aiming to have that done by the end of 2027 too. How important would that be in this move away from Russian supplies?
I think when we say the Russian energy imports, bulk of it is, as we discussed, it is natural gas. There is oil, and there is also uranium supply, nuclear supplies coming from Russia. I think to ban the oil from Russia is also very timely from a political perspective. But in addition to that, there is a huge amount of oil in the markets. There is a surplus of oil production. So it wouldn't have a major impact on the oil prices if it is done in a gradual and in a careful way. So it wouldn't lead to price spikes, as many of us might be scared of. So I think it will be timely if Europe goes that way. It will in turn help Europe to reduce Russian energy export revenues.
I'm wondering as well, because of course all of this is happening because of the ongoing war in Ukraine. How are you viewing the risks for Ukraine's energy system in this winter, as Russia's been continuing attacks on their energy infrastructure as Ukraine has on Russian energy infrastructure?
We have been following the Ukraine energy situation, especially when it comes to winter, and I would say that this is perhaps the most difficult winter of Ukrainian energy sector, because it is already very, very vulnerable. And we have seen that especially the electricity infrastructure and heating infrastructure is under huge strain. And this will be the most challenging winter Ukraine has faced since start of the war.
Do you see the situation getting much worse as the temperatures continue to alter?
It can get much worse than we have seen in the last 3 years. But of course, Ukraine allies are ready, hopefully, to support Ukraine, especially in terms of the electricity infrastructure.
From the EU point of view, this was framed by the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen as part of the ramp-up of renewable energy supplies in Europe too. I'm wondering, given the market dynamics that you've described, those low prices for gas as well, is this going to take, I suppose, some of the impetus out of the EU to further that shift into renewables?
It may somewhat, but I think the renewables are growing so strongly in Europe. Just in the last 3 years, after we have seen the major energy crisis in Europe, renewables increase 40%. We have never seen any country, including Europe, the European region, such a big increase. Plus, many European countries changed their position, as IEA has suggested, on nuclear power. There is a comeback of nuclear, and with the cheaper natural gas, I hope Europe will find a better mix, much more balanced mix now, good for the energy security, and with the lower natural gas prices, good for the competitiveness of Europe.
But of course, there's questions too about the grid adapting to this too. Of course, we had the blackout in Spain, a very dramatic moment for European energy supplies. How much of a risk are issues like that as the energy mix continues to change?
I think the electricity security risks are there, and the nerve center of all the electricity discussions here is the grids. We don't have enough smart and modern grids. The issue has been too much concentrated on building power plants, and we are okay with that. But we don't have enough grids to bring this electricity in the power plants to the household, to the factories. I think it is the next big job for European Commission.
Do we need to be concerned about more blackouts like what we saw in Spain?
Yes, we should, especially when the demand goes up strongly, which means extreme weather events, very cold or very hot summer. This may create big strains on the existing grids. So the first job, the next chapter for European Commission should be strengthening, building new grids in order to address these electricity security challenges.
Okay, Fatih Birol, the head of the International Energy Agency, thank you very much for joining us in our Brussels studio this morning.